Hey, it's Brookes with Character Design Forge. Whether we've drawn our characters, we've written about them, or they haven't left our head yet, we'd prefer that people care about them, pay attention to them, for our characters to resonate. And since that can be a struggle, here's 4 ways to make your character more exciting. And people are always asking me for more examples on screen when I'm describing things, so I've actually drawn a ton of examples specifically for this video. That said, they are just examples to illustrate a point, and in no way are they the pinnacle of ideal character design. Number 1 is to raise the stakes or lower your character's ability to meet them. If you've ever watched people, dogs, or horses jumping hurdles, literally the higher the obstacle is, the more invested and impressed we are by their ability to overcome them. But this goes both ways. We're impressed by a horse who can clear a 10-foot jump, but we're also equally impressed by a koala that can clear a 5-foot jump, or stay awake longer than an hour. You can increase the challenge of the obstacle your character faces, or lower their ability to accomplish it. Physical, mental, or emotional disparity between your character and their goals. The more struggle there is, the more exciting the scenario. Number 2 is to clarify. Imagine someone is telling you a story or a joke. It's long, there's a lot of extraneous details, so much so that when they get to the end you say, "That's it?" So wait a second, the can of tennis balls, the bridge over the stream, and the fly swatter, they didn't all matter? Now, from a storytelling perspective, it may aid your character to be simplified. Now, there's a balance to be struck where, of course. We don't want our characters to be one-note, flat character sheet stereotypes. But also, as much as there's a lot of good advice advocating that your characters be like real people, being as complex as a real person can stand to obfuscate anything meaningful that we're trying to say with them. From a visual perspective, if there's too many elements, or too many conflicting shapes or colors, or anything unclear about your character, it may serve you better to go back to your original description or your core idea of who your character is and what purpose they serve, and figure out what things to streamline and which things to double down on. Take this character here. Is it an astronaut, a deep sea diver, someone in a hazmat suit, a farmer? If we want to clarify, we streamline the elements down to a clearer concept. I just want to point out here that there are ways of making the character on the left work. That isn't really the argument. There's some characters who play on this gimmick of mishmashed parts. Off the top of my head, I can think of XL from Buzz Lightyear of Star Command and Lockdown from Transformers, if I want to really age myself. The key here, though, is that there's a tendency that I see in a lot of especially newer folks who might worry that with the character on the right, that's it, that it isn't special enough. But one of the keys to making something exciting is that an audience first needs to get invested in a character, and they can't do that if the character is hard to discern. The faster they can get a read, the faster and easier it will be for them to care. Number 3 is a twist of lime, or the 70-30, 80-20 rule. It's hard to excite people by showing them things that are already familiar covered ground to them. A knight in shining armor? Yep, we got it. A teenager going through a rough emotional time? Maybe it's relatable for your audience, but it's heavily treaded ground. But all it takes is something small, an interesting idea, a tiny twist or complication, to take an idea that we're familiar with and make it unique or exciting. A knight in shining armor that's actually a young dragon in disguise. They end up being the defender of a medieval kingdom, but eventually have to go against their own family. Or a teenager going through a rough time gains the power to pick and choose which emotions they feel. Do they shut themselves off, or learn a lesson about facing them head on? In storytelling, we call this the hook. It's the interesting piece that catches on to our interest. Now, from a visual perspective, this 70-30 or 80-20 percentage quite literally translates into contrasting shapes, elements, or colors. A palette made up of mostly brown and green earthy tones will get accentuated by a relatively bright red thrown in. Or a character that's pretty consistently themed after a certain era, theme, or setting, but has an item or feature that just doesn't fit. On a purely shape-based level too, taking a character that is homogeneously comprised of certain shapes, like round shapes here, and carving a portion of them with angles in contrast adds a very fundamental interest and excitement to the character. Number 4 is to juxtapose, a word which means to place or deal with close together for contrasting effect. And speaking of contrast, you need not look any further than salted caramel to understand that juxtaposing two opposites together can be an interesting new idea. Opposites attract, or in our case, add a spice of which variety in life is comprised of. I don't know. Here we have an adorable Animal Crossing-esque hamster character, and things seem to all be going to plan. But if we juxtapose him with a dystopian environment, we start asking some questions. Is this indomitable little hamster simply unfazed by his surroundings? Is there a dark edge to him, and looks are simply deceiving? We can do the same with a character, because the difference between these two is ripe for interesting ways to play off of each other. Visually, this character could match them in style and tone, or not match them in style and tone. Naturally, we all want people to care about the characters and stories that we make. It's validating to make that connection. And of course, there's plenty more to dig deeper on in the realm of drawing, design, and story, which we talk about every week here on Character Design Forge. There's a ton of new things up in the shop linked below, including comics, custom Animal Crossing commissions, one-on-one sessions, and video critiques. We've also got a new Beako's backpack full of original art delivered right to your mailbox every month, and this month is the first themed Beako's backpack featuring Beako's traveling party from our Cast to Design series. You can check out more about that and keep the forge burning over on patreon.com/bageldenizen. You can keep up with me on Instagram, Twitter, and Twitch, also at bageldenizen, and make sure you've rung the bell on YouTube so you know when new videos go live. Thank you so much for watching, and have fun creating.